Hello, Illuminaries. This is Tamara Westwood, your host, and welcome back for part two of our Illuminary Spotlight with Dr. Jerry Marzinsky. In this segment, we talk about those traumatic wounds that can affect us and make us more susceptible to mental illness and mental disorders. We also talk about the importance of healing the trauma with complete and total forgiveness. So thank you for listening. I hope you do enjoy it. And reach out to me. I'd love to hear from you at beyondhypnosis.org.
These voices are consistently negative. They never tell them anything positive. It's always negative.
Right.
And I'm going, if it's a hallucination, which is random,
Mm-hmm.
this is not one.
Mm-hmm.
And you would, and I thought, well, maybe, they're hallucinating and this is word salad they're hearing. It's just a bunch of words, like, the voices are talking to them but not making any sense. No, that wasn't the case. You creep up behind when you listen to what he's saying. He's carrying on half a conversation. It's a coherent conversation with something I can't see.
Right.
And he's reacting to whatever this is in that conversation, getting mad and arguing, and that's a coherent conversation. They don't talk about that in school. So I started asking these guys, what are the voices telling me? And they would get upset. They didn't want to talk about the voices. There is no positive benefit for a schizophrenic to talk about his voices. It's always negative stuff happens. People abandon them. They, hey, you're possessed. The family gets worried. They drag them off to the psychiatrist. The psychiatrist says you're nuts. Fills them full of drugs. They get locked up. There's nothing good happens.
Yeah, there's no intelligence lacking here. They understand that this is something that I can't do if I want to live in society.
Well, or if I don't want to be drugged senseless or locked up.
Right.
Or lose all my friends or worry my family.
Right.
So, and the voices themselves, I didn't know this at the time, the voices themselves are telling them not to talk to anybody about it. And they're telling them, you keep talking about it, you're going to get locked up. I didn't know it at the time. But yeah, there is no positive outcome for them to talk about their voices, especially to a psych. The guys who locked them up in the first place. So it took me a couple of years to learn how to talk to them. And what I found is every little bit I found about the voices. If they sensed that I thought those voices were hallucinations, they would shut up. They wouldn't tell me anything. They would just clam up. But if I kind of kept an open mind and gave them the benefit of the doubt, even though I didn't know what they were, and then I would tell them what I knew about them, they would start to open up, and bit by bit by bit. They would tell me how they operated and what they did and what they were saying.
Yeah. And the funny thing is last time you shared that there was a consensus, within the prison population on what these voices were saying, and one of them, just to break it down to the audience, if you didn't see the last one, that you learned that these voices got angry with you and said, hey, you have no right to interfere with our way of life, right?
Well, that's the one. That's the one where my denial system completely fell apart.
Yeah.
For 7 years at the state hospital and probably another 6 working at the state prison before I ever came to that conclusion. It was like staring me in the face, but I did not want to see it. I did not want to admit it. And every time the psychiatrist found out I was asking patients about their hallucinations, I was ordered to stop.
Of course, yeah.
You're upsetting my patients. These are hallucinations. They don't want to talk about them. You're making them worse. And it's like, they never investigated these things. They don't know what they are. They don't know how they operate. What they would do is if the patient told them, hey, the voices are telling me to kill myself, they'd drug them up and lock them up in a padded cell and leave them there until they weren't suicidal anymore. So patients learned not to tell them that they were suicidal or their voices were telling them to kill themselves. So 4 out of 10 of them did kill themselves.
Right.
What was interesting, is that the suicide rate for psychiatrists is exactly the same.
Interesting. So where do you think that correlation is coming from? Is it the entities, that are the voices? Are they affecting the
I
psychiatry?
can tell you, they don't like psychiatrists. They don't,
Right.
they don't like their meds. So that's one of the first things I saw at the state hospital. I didn't understand it when I first got there, but I saw it. The psychiatrists would get beat up at a rate horrendously higher than anybody else, including nurses, medical doctors, uh, psychologists, counselors, um, and why? I didn't understand why, but they would.
Right.
And their assault rate, I have that here somewhere.
They don't like the medication, right? Because it limits
No,
their
they
their
don't,
ability to control.
yeah, they don't like the medication.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I got the statistics on it, but
Mhm.
the assault rate upon psychiatrists is like 10 times that of the normal population.
Right.
I
And
just-
then the suicide. So do you think the voices were causing the suicides in the psychiatrists themselves?
I'd say it's a definite possibility.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I couldn't say that for sure.
Right.
You know, but they didn't like psychiatrists and they didn't like their medicines.
Right. Hmm.
Um, so you were asking about, the internal, what's going on in there with the thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there was one time, it was like toward the end of the 7 years I spent at the state hospital, where I still didn't understand what the voices were.
Mm-hmm.
So I was sitting out in the back of my patio, and what I did is I come home from the state hospital. I was living on a big lake, and I would go swim in the lake. So a couple of days before, I prayed and I said, Lord, tell me what these things are. What are they? And just kind of dropped it. And then a week or two later, I was taking a swim out in this lake, and it was at night, because all the motorboats were going at night, and the water was just glass smooth. And I was in very good shape then, and I went out in the lake and I just started swimming. I broke into a kind of a meditative stroke.
Mm-hmm.
Just kept going and going and going, just concentrating on how I was pushing the water and how that felt. And
Jerry,
just,
I don't want to cut you off. Do you hear that noise in the background? I hear.
yeah, I hear hold on.
Oh, okay. So as we wait for Jerry to get back, I think there's some conversations going on in the other room there. But yeah, we want to kind of get to the bottom of this and understanding, what goes on with our thoughts, and possibly the idea that our thoughts can become hijacked, when we are in different states. Like Jerry, you're explaining, that instance when you went scuba diving, right? And then you became fearful.
No, that was the trip to the lake, like I was talking about.
Right.
What I actually, when I stopped and was tired,
Mm-hmm.
suddenly I by then I was a certified scuba diver. I was like a fish in the water. I was dead tired. I knew I couldn't make it back to the shore without resting some. And, I stopped, and here comes this thought in my head that says, you're tired. And I was. You're too far from the shore to make it back.
Mm-hmm.
And I was, because I was too tired.
Right.
Said, and the lights are going off, so you're going to be disoriented. You won't be able to see where the shore is.
Mm-hmm.
That was true.
All the negative truth.
And
Yeah.
it throws in, and you're going to drown.
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, where did that come from? That was the last thing on my mind. I wasn't worried about it at all.
You had been well trained, right? You were a licensed scuba diver, so there's no reason that would happen.
No. Everything was under control, and I'm like, where did that come from? And it was a yes set. When you study about yes sets in psych, it's like yes, 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 and then the thing you want to happen, like salesmen, you go, oh, you love this vacuum cleaner, you clean your house really good, you can afford it.
Right.
You want to buy it, don't you? And I got hit with this yes set. I'm like, where did that come from?
Mm-hmm.
Is my mind using a yes set against me, telling me I'm going to drown? No, that ain't going to happen.
So apparently that wasn't his mind. I mean, and it's not. Apparently it didn't come from you, Jerry.
No,
this was outside.
I sensed that at the time, so I'm like, what? Where the hell did that come from?
Yeah, but you were in a vulnerable state. You were tired.
Well, I was tired, but I wasn't really vulnerable. I knew what to do. So, what you do is you put your hands behind your back and you just flop over in water like a dead person. So your face is underwater.
Right.
You're just floating, and then when you need air, you whip your head up, blow all the air out of your lungs, and then you start sinking. And before you sink, you suck in another full lung full of air.
Mm-hmm.
And then what happens is you sink down below the surface a couple of feet, and then you bob back up like a dead man again, and you're just kind of floating, with your arms behind your back, and it takes very little energy. You can do that for days if you had to, as long as the water was warm. So I wasn't worried about it. So the next time I go to do this, I start sinking because it took the air, and then this thing comes in and it goes, you're heading toward the bottom, you're going to drown. And I'm like, what?
Right. It wasn't you.
It wasn't me. And I sink down. You hit what's called a crush depth, where your lung, the water pressure crushes your lungs and you're no longer buoyant. You start sinking really fast. So I did that. I started going down really fast, and I was kind of a little spooked by what was going on because I didn't understand what was going on, and I knew that wasn't me, and I didn't know what it was, and I didn't know where it was coming from. So when I started dropping really fast, I shot toward the surface, and even before I got there, I knew that was the crush depth. I'd been there a million times before. I got to the surface, and as soon as I got to the surface, it says, look, you're panicking. You're heading toward the bottom. You're going to drown. And I'm like,
wow.
Oh crap, what is this? So go down again, go through the crush depth, equalize the pressure in my ears, sink down. And then I felt this cold, eerie feeling moving up my legs, and man, shot to the surface again. But even before I got there, I knew I'd hit the thermocline, which is a layer of cold water that usually sinks to the bottom and stays there. It's very noticeable. So got to the top again, and here it comes again. Yeah, look, you're far from the shore. The lights are going out, and the lights were going out, and you're panicking, and there's a motorboat coming at you.
Oh no!
You can hear a motor underwater for a long distance. I didn't hear it.
Yeah.
I look around, and off in the distance is a motorboat with the green navigation lights coming, what it looked like, right at me. So I'm like, holy cow. How did it know that? I didn't even know that. What the hell's going on? So it says, he can't see you in the dark. You're just a little speck out here, and he's heading right for you. That motor, the propeller, is going to cut you to pieces.
Jerry.
So I'm like, okay, I've dealt with that before. I was diving. I'd have to go down and hug the rocks until the boat passed over, and I had no doubt that I could do it, go down again until the thing passed over if I had to.
Yeah. Thank goodness for your training. I mean, you could counter all of those arguments.
And that's what you need to do. That's exactly what you need to do with these voices. So I was tracking the thing, and it's coming, and it passed by like 25 feet away, and I'm watching it pass. And as I'm looking at it, I then turn around, and I wasn't paying attention to the wake. So the wake, just as I'm taking a breath in, the wake washes over me, and it takes me by surprise, and I got a mouthful of water and started spitting out water and coughing, and it jumps in there. It looks, you're drowning, you're going to die. And I'm like, what the hell is this thing? So I take another breath, head for the bottom, said, okay, I'm going to drown. I'll show you how I'm going to drown. So, went through the crush depth, went through the thermocline, and I was surprised because the thermocline wasn't just sitting on the bottom. It was like 10 feet from the bottom. So I went through that layer of cold water
Mm-hmm.
and then into warm water again,
Mm-hmm.
and then sunk down. And I don't know, it must have been 25 or 30 feet by the time I got down there. And then I felt this icky thing crawling up my leg. And I'm like, shot to the surface again. And even before I got there, I went, that's the bottom, it's mud. I thought it was rock because all the shore was covered with rock. So I wasn't expecting mud to be out there. I thought the whole bottom of the lake was rock. So, even before I got to the top, it was like, okay, it's mud. So I got up there. As soon as I got up there, same thing again. Look, the lights are going out. You're too far you're too tired to make it to the shore. You're panicking. You're not going to make it. You're going to drown. I'm like, what the hell is this thing? So I went back down again, stuck in the mud like a dead man, and was just floating above the water, the bottom with my arms out, my feet stuck in the mud. I couldn't see anything. It was pitch black. I couldn't hear anything. I couldn't feel anything. I wasn't breathing. All my senses were shut down. And I was a little bit scared, waiting for something to come out of the dark water and grab me. So, I was like, wasn't thinking. I was more feeling like putting out the radar. Is something going to touch me? This is so weird. And I could only hold my breath for maybe 20 seconds after I got down there.
Mm-hmm.
It was a peak experience. All the senses shut down.
Mm-hmm.
All that I was aware of was I was aware that I was aware. And that's what's there, past all this bullcrap that's going in your head all the time.
Yes.
That's what's there. And that's what you're thinking prevents you from accessing.
Yes, I see.
So, when we're first born, there is no thought.
Mm-hmm.
And that little baby's in the present all the time, just like a dog. They're in the present all the time. They're not thinking all the time. They're not saying, I shouldn't have said this, or I shouldn't have said that, or I shouldn't have done this, or I shouldn't have done that, or running their heads all the time. What's sad is people think that they are their thoughts.
Wow. So all of that is interference and distraction from
Yes.
who we really
Who
are.
you are. Exactly. That's who you really are.
Mm.
And these voices, now, remember I was talking about the entire population and the segment, so here's the professor saying, that trying to describe that segment as different from the entire population. Psychotics are a segment of the population we belong to.
Yes.
They are us. They are not different from us. They belong to us. So if you look what's going on in your own head, it's a dumbed down version of what's happening with the psychotics. And I'm sure all of you guys are walking along the street one day, and all of a sudden this thought comes into your mind that is just like horrendous. It's just ugly and nasty, and it's shocking, and it's like, where did that come from? It's something you would never do. You're ashamed that you even thought about it, and then you feel guilty for thinking about it, and it's not something you would normally entertain, and it's like, you're just like taken aback.
Right. And then you begin to ruminate on all that negativity.
And
And then you go down the spiral.
right, you go, what kind of person am I? They're thinking these kind of thoughts.
Yeah.
And that thought didn't belong to you. Matter of fact, none of your thoughts belong to you.
So Jerry, and I remember, of course, this is a statistic, but in my practice, I have noticed that people who have early trauma, in their lives, tend to be more vulnerable to these disorders or malfunctions in thinking.
Yes.
Because there's a belief that's wrapped around, as a young child, there's a belief about the world that, the world is an unsafe place. I was hurt, I was harmed.
That,
There's something wrong with me, or I'm not enough. And so it's there.
it's there.
Right.
And what that does is generate negative emotional energy. Now, one thing I saw while I was working in the prison is that every time these schizophrenics were attacked by the voices, after those voices left, those people were totally drained.
Yeah.
So drained they couldn't even get out of bed to eat breakfast. And it was consistent.
Yes.
And I had no idea why that was happening. But it was consistent. And all they'd been doing is laying in bed all night, tossing and turning, and with the voices screaming at them. They weren't expending any physical energy. So, I'd ask them, where'd your energy go? And they'd say, well, I don't know. And say, did you use it? No, I didn't use it. Well, where'd it go? I don't know. And that was I had no idea. I saw it. I didn't know what to make of it. I didn't know what to think of it, but it was consistent. And I was thinking that it was due to the anxiety. I mean, these voices can create an awful lot of anxiety.
Certainly.
And I figured, well, that it's the anxiety that's draining me. But then one day a situation came about where I was assigned to the jail for the prison, which is the worst of the worst. I got a kite or a letter from the captain of that facility saying, listen, I've got a guy in the cell here who's psychotic, and he's hearing voices, and he's not sleeping at night, and he's not on medications, and he's standing there staring at his cellmate at 3 a.m, just looking down at him, and pacing the room, which is kind of freaky for the other guy.
I'm certainly he's saying, get me out of here.
Get me out of here. And he's locked in with this guy, and no telling. I don't know what that guy's record was, but boy, he was floridly psychotic. He was. Now, the guy who was wanting out of there, who wasn't psychotic, had snitched off a drug gang in the prison, the Aryan Brotherhood, which is a pretty nasty gang, and they wanted him dead. They were pissed off because they broke up the gang. They lost a lot of drugs that they had smuggled in there. A lot of the gang members were sent to different prisons all over the state, and they were pissed.
Yeah.
So they were so pissed that some of these gang members were doing things that would get them thrown into the CDU so they could get at this guy.
Sure.
They'd already stabbed him a couple of times. They didn't kill him, but they already stabbed him. And then they have, I don't know how they do it. I saw it, but I have no idea how they do it. So you got like 50 feet between the cell blocks, and these guys would fold up a note with a string on it, and they would throw it across the cell block, and it would go like a flash and right under a door on the other side of the cell block. It was incredible. And you just look at it, and then the string comes back empty. So here they are communicating with one another through this. I have no idea. I mean, that's a long way to throw a piece of paper that's folded up on a string.
Sure.
And then the hole under the door is like this big, and it goes right under there. So here they are shooting these notes into this guy who's not psychotic in that cell, saying, we're going to get you. We're here. As soon as you come out, first chance we get, we're going to get you. So they're right there.
He's in a state of fear.
Oh man, you
right. Big time.
Big time. You couldn't get into, so here he's living with a psychotic who's staring at him at night, and he doesn't know what that guy's going to do. Then he's got these gangsters trying to kill him on top of that. He's locked in there with these guys.
Right.
And you can't get too much more anxiety than that.
Right.
Here they are in the same cell. So it's a perfect experimental situation. Everything is equalized. The food, the atmosphere, the placement, the treatment, everything is equalized. So it was like, I'm looking at this. So I talked to the guy, the psychotic guy first, and he could barely make it up those steps, up to the interview room. He's just dragging. He had no energy. His voice was low. He just, just no energy whatsoever. And okay, send him back, and then pulled up the other guy, and this guy just bolted up the steps. He had more energy he had 10 times more energy than the psychotic guy. And I'm like, okay, it's not the anxiety.
So it's not anxiety.
Not anxiety. So that's like, okay, then what is it?
Mm-hmm.
And I was reading Carlos Castaneda, and I was reading the Toltec fellow, forgot, another shaman. And he said that these entities are, energetic vampires. They're parasites.
So they feed off of our energy. We're batteries basically of
They
energy.
feed off of negative emotional energy is what he's saying. So, okay, I don't trust authority. I kind of, and then here's a shaman guy saying this crazy stuff. So I figured, well, I don't know what the answer is. I know it's not anxiety. So I brought I forgot what his name, he wrote The Voice of Knowledge. He wrote The Four Agreements.
Oh, Ruiz.
Ruiz.
Yes. Don Miguel Ruiz.
Don Miguel Ruiz. So I brought his book in there where he's talking about these parasitic entities. Mm-hmm. And while I was working in the prison, I always had a small group of schizophrenics that I had personally chosen who would tell me everything their voices were telling me. And that was rare, especially to be telling a psych. So that was like a fine balance between how much could I trust them and how much could they trust me. And there were some times where I would give them the benefit of the doubt, where most people wouldn't. And that was a fine balance there. But I brought that book into one fella who had told me the voices were getting pissed off at me because I was interfering with what they were doing.
You had the nerve to meddle.
Yep, I had the nerve to meddle.
Mm-hmm.
So then this guy, at a later time, he turns around on the way out the door and he looks at me and goes, "You know what you're doing is dangerous, don't you?" And I hadn't thought about it. I'm thinking, well, whatever these voices are, they're stuck in their heads. They can't come out.
Yeah, it's in them. Yeah, that 5%, right?
So I'm like, I'm not worried about it. It's in them. So he turned around and he said, "You know what you're doing is dangerous, don't you?" I'm like, well, that's odd coming from him. Maybe he knows something I don't, but I don't, they can't come out of him and get me. So, when I read that thing, I brought that book into the prison and brought this guy back in. And, I said, I got something here I want to read to you. And I'd like your opinion on it. Because I was always asking them questions, not like the psychiatrists. I mean, I wanted to know what was going on in their heads.
Well, I imagine you developed a really strong rapport because you were someone who was actually trying to connect with them, on a human level. Yeah.
Yeah, but
but I'm talking about with the human people.
So what happened with that is when I read that, this guy looked at me like a zombie, and he's just staring at me. And then
what exactly did you read? Do you remember?
It was basically about, these entities being energetic vampires.
Okay.
That's generally what it was saying. And I was wanting to know his opinion about that. And just went into a zombie-like stare, and he's just staring at me, stone-faced. And then this electrical crackling erupted behind my head.
Right.
Started moving up the wall. I don't know if I told you about this.
Yeah, you did. That was pretty freaky there.
Around the room, and then it scared the hell out of me. At that point, I knew that whatever that was could come out, and it could affect physical reality.
Right.
And after he left, I'm like, yeah, get out of here. I didn't call him back for months. And finally, when I did, I asked him, "Hey, did you hear that crackling the last time you were here?" And he goes, "Yeah, I did, but I'm surprised you did." And I asked him, I said, "Well, what was that?" He said, "That was the voices. That was them."
Wow.
I said, "What were they doing?" He said, "They were trying to scare you off." And I said, "Well, they did a damn good job of it." And I said, "What were you thinking when you walked out the door? And what were they telling you?" And he said, "They were telling me to get a shank and stick it in your belly." And then I asked him, I was thinking like you did, "Oh yeah, I got a good rapport with this guy." I said, "Well, why didn't you do it?" And he said, "I couldn't find one."
Yeah, that blew me away right there. That's That's pretty scary. And it's pretty amazing that more things don't happen. You know what I mean? Like that in our world. So that lets me know that we have a bit more power than we think we do.
Well, the other thing is you also have a belief system that doesn't incorporate this kind of stuff.
Okay.
So you see what you want to see, you hear what you want to hear, and
Right.
if something comes in that doesn't fit, you will take your mind, and you won't have anything to do with it. I mean, your mind will take care of it automatically, and it'll pound a round peg into a square hole trying to make it fit.
Yes.
Because the mind just doesn't like something that it doesn't understand and doesn't comprehend. And that was something I had to learn early on, and I had to test that and see that for myself. The way I did that was pretty bizarre, but it worked out. I mean, that's what's happening. So you have to have an open mind, and you can't go like psychiatry says, oh, these are hallucinations, because we say they're hallucinations. You know, they have no evidence. They've done no research. They've not questioned these guys. They prevent anybody else from questioning these guys. So it's like, the truth doesn't become error because those morons won't see it.
Right. So as you mentioned earlier, the key, to this is to counter those voices that come in and tell you all these negative, destructive things that you know are not you.
Right.
It's not coming from you.
Now, the voice in your head now is not you. It's your story.
The story.
The story. And it keeps repeating that story.
Right.
Over and over. And when it's done, the story is the way the story was.
So that's the personality that's formed from the pillars of socialization and
right.
system.
So what these entities do, they feed off of negative emotional energy. So you were talking about the people who were sexually molested and brutalized and that kind of stuff. It's like a shark smelling blood. These things can sense negative emotional energy, and they are drawn to it like a shark to blood. So it's all frequency.
Yes.
It's all frequency. So your mind is working at a certain frequency, and you can see that in action, like all the schoolboys hang out with the schoolboys, and the football players hang out with the football players, and the therapists hang out with the therapists. And
there's a resonance, yeah.
They're on the same frequency. So these entities are on a very low frequency. And those people who have been damaged severely are on a low frequency also. And these things can sense that. And they'll go in there and they will dump gasoline on that. So one thing you can say with normal people, everybody, the way your mind works is basically the same way a schizophrenic does, but at a different frequency. So every negative thought you have about yourself or anyone else is put there by these entities. And every negative thought generates a negative emotional response, which they feed off of.
Right, which is like a call, right? A frequency.
Frequency.
A frequency call out there of negativity. Right. And here they come, right?
That's right. So if you look at yourself existing in an ocean and these entities are all around you, if you're a very positive, happy person, that's not their frequency, and it takes a lot of work for them to turn that channel to that far over. But the people who are already damaged are on that lower frequency. Now, that if you know how to use that, that could be a blessing, because what they do is they go after the wounds. They'll sense that wound, and they know, they basically give you their mind. So they have access to your entire memory. I've had patients report to me that the voices brought stuff up that they had forgot decades ago. Yeah. So they can go in there and they can pull up every negative thing that ever happened to you. And then
film, Jerry, that really ties into what you're saying. And I don't remember the film, but the tagline was, they know what scares you.
Yes. Yep.
They know all about you.
They know all about you because they have access to your memory.
Yes.
So they will feed you with things, and they will make you interpret things. So the schizophrenic, paranoid schizophrenic, he's afraid of everything, because those voices are telling them, they're making the interpretation. Carlos Castaneda said they give you their mind.
Yes. And hey, when someone else is giving you or possessing you, for a period of time, there's a fight there. So there's no reason, there's no wonder that the individual will be so exhausted, after.
Yeah, there's a constant battle for control, where the patient is fighting for control of his own mind.
Mm-hmm.
These voices are saying, there several patients have asked them, who are you? What are you? And they would say, we are you.
Who are you? Just lying. Yeah.
So that lines up with, your thoughts are not who you are.
Mm-hmm.
If your thoughts are who you are, then who's listening? Who's listening?
Yes.
It's that silence back there, the awareness that you're aware that's listening.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So these negative entities are inserting negative thoughts into all our minds. It's like fishing. They've gone, okay, let's see if this one works. Will that one set off a negative emotional response? And if it does, they feed off of that negative emotional energy.
Sure. So if that is your belief that it's true, right? They help to make it true when it's really not, so that you are distracted and believing, oh, okay, so it's true then. You know what I mean? They make it true.
Well, they make it true. And also they have access to your entire memory, so they can, so you were abused as a kid. It's like now you're sensitive to abuse, and they'll say, oh, this guy's going to abuse you, or that guy's going to abuse you, or
Right.
don't trust anybody, or, every negative thought generates negative emotional energy. And that's what they feed off. So we're like cattle to them.
Mm.
They do the same thing to us that we do to cattle. We go out, we eat food, we generate energy, and they insert these negative thoughts into our minds that generate negative emotional energy, and then they drain it. That's why you see depressed people have no energy. That's why schizophrenics have no energy. They're being sucked dry. So your thoughts are not you. Your thoughts are vulnerable to these things injecting their thoughts into your mind. But you also have positive entities too that usually don't speak unless you're on the verge of death, but they speak more in feeling and intuition. You know what you're doing is wrong. You know you shouldn't be doing this. You feel it.
They don't go into long stories about why you should or shouldn't do something. For me, it's just a very direct notion. It's very short, cut and dry. But when there's this almost a pleading and a rationalizing and an on and on and on, then I know that's the wrong thing. The intuition is very direct, very subtle, bam, you know it.
And everybody has at least 2 guardian angels. But they don't help unless you ask them. They can't barge in. They need your permission to help them. They can't interfere with your free will.
Your free will, yes.
Unless you ask. And I don't know how many schizophrenics that, I said, well, ask your guardian angels for help. And the voices would shut up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just that simple.
Well, that helps.
Mm-hmm.
But they have to change their frequency.
Right.
So what these voices are actually doing is pointing to their wounds. Mm-hmm. So, example, knowing that these negative thoughts, I mean, especially the big ones that barge in, are coming from them. I was out in the back out here in Arizona, and we don't mow lawns. We get a machete and we go out there and cut the cactus away to chop. So I'm out there with the machete and chopping cactus, and I have a beautiful husky, a white husky. So here I am with the machete in my hand, cutting cactus, and the dog comes by, and here comes a slug, cut off his head. And I'm like,
oh no.
What? You know, and I'm like, the negative reaction, it's like, what, how could you think such a thing? And then I started feeling guilty. And then I went, I know what this was. I know, but it was like, you could feel it was like getting a rock and throwing it into a pond and just watching the negative emotional energy just boom from that one thought.
Wow.
So I'm kind of going, okay, well, there's something there. Otherwise I wouldn't have had that reaction. What is it? It's got something to do with animals and perhaps abusing animals, because here's this thing, they got that reaction out of me telling me to hurt the dog.
Right. It came from somewhere. It came
from somewhere, and it had something to do with animals.
Right.
Abusing them. So I'm like, where did that come from? And then it popped to mind. I mean, it went back to when I was like 5 years old. And I was shooting a bow and arrow at a big box, and the family cat kept going back and forth in front of the target. So, I'm like, well, he's a pain in the butt. I'll teach him a lesson. I put him in the box, and I figured, well, I'll shoot at the top of the box. He can't reach the top of the box. And that would scare him away, and he won't come out anymore.
Right.
So I did that, shot at the top of the box, and then went to get the arrow back, opened up the box, and the arrowhead hit him in the eye and poked out his eye.
Oh.
Horrified. I was absolutely horrified.
I imagine your 5-year-old self was just mortified about what you had done.
Tell anybody what I'd done, I couldn't tell anybody what I'd done because I'd get a beating, and it would be like, I didn't want to admit I'd done something like that.
Right.
And, I just felt absolutely horrible, and I stuffed it in there and tried to forget.
It was unprocessed.
It was unprocessed and was sitting there raw all those years.
Yeah.
And that cat broke away from the family and became feral. And I would see it every once in a while with its eye knocked out. And it would just, every time I saw it, it was like, oh my God, what do I do?
Yeah, that was quite a wound.
That was quite a wound. And
you.
So that thing knew.
Mm.
That thing knew that was a wound, and it went right for it, and it pushed that button, like it needed to be fed, like you go to a candy machine, you push the button, and out comes the candy. So it's like, okay, I haven't dealt with that.
So that sounds like, an ideal healing modality.
Well, if you know how to do it,
if you're mindful enough to recognize, right?
So I had to forgive myself, and I had to, well, that cat taught me a valuable lesson. We haven't abused animals since then.
Right.
And it's it was something that needed to be healed. So they go after those wounds. Mm-hmm. So if you can trace that back, they could be some of your greatest teachers.
Yes, if you're willing. I mean, Carlos Castaneda, you talk about the petty tyrants.
Right.
Right?
Right.
And so right there, those petty tyrants are tools, that can be used for sure.
And that's kind of what your mind is a petty tyrant.
Mm-hmm.
Because you look at what you think about most of the time. I mean, if you're mindful and you think about it, the crap that goes through your head is unbelievable.
Yes, it is.
You just track it and like, what am I thinking about that for? There's nothing I can do. You're either in the past or you're in the future, but you're not in the present, and that's the only place you can live. Mm-hmm. So if these things can keep you distracted into the past or into the future, worrying about the future or feeling guilty about the past, they're generating a lot of negative emotional energy.
They certainly are.
You can shut that down and just stay in the present. They can't feed on you. Mm-hmm. And music is one of the best ways to do that. Pleasant music without words. Mm-hmm. The schizophrenics will always listen to this acid rock, this horrible sounding screeching crap. But the mind is occupied when you're listening to beautiful music, and it shuts down, and you have peace during that time.
Mm-hmm. Because of the resonance, it changes the brain waves. Yeah.
Castaneda over and over and over again said, you must learn how to shut off the internal dialogue. He said, at that point, the whole world will change. Mm-hmm. Because your world is maintained by that dialogue.
That's right.
It's constantly seeking out reinforcement for what it's thinking.
Right. And that's your identity. And that identity becomes a habit, if you will.
Yeah, becomes a habit. It's your story, and everybody has a story,
Yes.
but that story isn't true. It's just your story. It's like behind that story is that silent awareness that you're aware that you're aware, and that's what's there. So if these things can keep your mind occupied with all this crap, and you look at the news media, it's negative, fearful, awful stuff. And these violent games, I mean, who's in charge of doing these things? And the wars and the conflict and the fighting and these things.
Plenty of food for these things. I mean, that's what our world creates.
That's right. We're
to counter that is to recognize, that divine power that we have within to create. That we don't have to keep creating what we've been creating. We can step out of that and create
something positive.
Yeah, and that's what we do.
But first, you have to heal those wounds.
Yeah.
If you don't heal those wounds,
otherwise you can't. You're going to keep going back to them.
You keep going back to them, and anytime that somebody comes into your sphere who is reminding you of those wounds, that's going to push your button.
Yeah.
Then there's going to be a reaction against that person, and that person's going to react to you, and it'll be, I knew he was bad from the start.
Right. Yeah. And so the whole goal is to get rid of the buttons.
The whole goal is
to blame the other people.
Right. And to forgive, like the Bible says.
Yes.
If you can't forgive, you're not going to heal those wounds.
Right. And, in actuality, it just came to me that forgiveness, I mean, real forgiveness, is changing your mind.
Yeah.
Changing your mind about whatever it is, and completely.
Yeah. Well, you don't have to forget about it, but you can't let it eat you either. It's right. Like, okay, this is part of what was necessary to get you where you are.
Right. It's a learning.
It's a learning. And some people take some really nasty kicks in the butt. What it takes to wake them up.
Yes. Yeah, and a lot of times life will give them to you gently in the beginning, but if you keep ignoring them, they're going to get
cranking them up
and harder kicks.
Exactly right. Let's keep cranking it up until they get your attention.
Yeah. Very, very fascinating. I'm so glad that we got to, the solution end of this, because, there definitely is an upside. We found out or kind of touched on how to use the horrific voices and these entities that feed on us, how to use what they're doing as a tool for our growth, right?
So
identify the source that they're picking at.
Well, the Course in Miracles talks about that too. It talks about projection. So everything you see in somebody else that you don't like,
there it is.
You, or you wouldn't see it.
That's right. Takes one to know one.
That's right. It takes one to know one. So what happens is if you have a little bit of whatever this negative trait is in you, it takes somebody with a horrendous amount of it to set that off.
Yes.
So you have somebody that, you see like that and you go, oh man, I don't like this guy. He's just totally obnoxious. Everybody knows he's obnoxious. You've got a little bit in you. But you got a lot in you. It just takes a little bit from somebody else to set that off.
Yes. Yeah. And that's why we're all here together,
Oh, yeah.
We're all one another's psychotherapists.
We're all one another's mirrors.
Big time.
Big time.
Oh, I love it. So when's the book coming out? The therapy process?
I'm still working on it. Sherry's helping me.
Oh, awesome. Okay.
Interview her too. She's been there.
Yes, I've heard some of her interviews. I'd love to have her on too at some point. Thanks for giving her contact information. I'll reach out to her.
Yeah, but you probably may have to wait until the weather
wait until spring.
She's got this loud heater that when that thing goes off, you can't hear anything. She'd love to talk to you. I'd highly advise you to get her on there too, because she's been there.
Most definitely.
The only voice I've ever heard was that one on the lake that time, but she's struggled with them for decades, and they almost killed her.
Wow.
She found her way out of it, and she never went to a psychiatrist, and she never took any meds. And I knew her for 10 years, working with her on prison reform projects, before one day I started talking to her about a patient that I had at the hospital who was hearing voices. And she goes, oh, I know all about that. I've heard them when I was a kid. She's one of the most spiritual people I know. I'm like, I couldn't comprehend that. I'm like, what? So I started banging her with questions that only somebody who heard the voices would know the answers to. And she was just right on, bam, 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 bam. I'm like, holy cow.
Wow.
This woman has traveled a humongous psychological distance. I mean, tremendous. I'm going from being, what they would call schizophrenic, but she's never been labeled that. She's adamant about that, to being one of the most spiritual people I know. I mean, the psychological distance that she has covered has just been immense. But if she didn't go through that, which was her launching pad,
yes,
she would have never got to where she is now.
Right. Yeah.
But I'd highly recommend you talk to her too, because you'll get the inside story from her. So, we make a good team. I've been looking in, for 35, 40 years, and she's been there. And we agree on what we see.
What would be ultimate here, Jerry, is if we could come up with some sort of a protocol for parents. You're raising children, and if you could raise children in such a way to where they could recognize these, or maybe we could avoid this altogether, and teaching children to maintain that God self, the one that's back there observing, the one that is who we really are, the one that's aware of the truth at all times.
Well, that's where the kids are before they learn language.
Right.
Once they learn language, that's like Adam and Eve getting that apple. Once you learn language, then these entities can start manipulating you to use you as a feeding source. Before language, though, they can't get you. They have to have language.
That's interesting, Jerry, that you say that, because I was reading about it and kind of really pondering that whole idea of the fall, if you will, and the fall is basically knowing good and bad, not just good, but both, and that's kind of an interesting, because we're so used to knowing good and bad. How can you be in a place where you only knew no good, and without the bad, that's.
Well, there's people who did it. They talk about these rainbow guys who haven't thought a negative thought in 15, 20 years, and then they just dematerialize.
These are guys in Tibet, I think. The rainbow bodies. Yes.
They
wow.
go for, years and years and years without a single negative thought.
Now, are they actually intermingled and enmeshed in society, or are they in a monastery?
As far as I know, they were in monasteries.
Mm-hmm.
They're kind of real spiritual people. I think it's real hard to be enmeshed in society. And, you have the television saying, yeah, you're going to die, and nuclear war is coming, and the Koreans are going to bomb us. And look at the amount of fear that the deep state is generating by broadcasting this crap to us all the time. You can't get anything positive on a news report.
It just makes you wonder the root of it. Are these entities generating these things, to
those guys
fly up, right?
They're eating up with them. You look at the lies that the mainstream media is feeding us right now. Yeah. It's just unbelievable. And then the violent games, the violent TV shows, the murder mysteries, the fear of the aliens. Next thing they'll be saying, oh, there's an alien invasion, fear that.
And then social media, for all the good that it does, it perpetuates it. It just multiplies it.
But it allows us to speak to one another.
See, and that's the good side of it. But that other side, oh my goodness. Yeah.
Well, all that negative stuff, keep in mind that they're feeding off it. That's their food. We're their cattle.
Yeah.
You have to do something with that thought process and realize that you are not what you're thinking. You are not your thoughts. You are the awareness that's aware behind those thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
Now, those thoughts affect that awareness.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're watching this, but without that, you're just in the present. You're aware that you're aware,
Mm-hmm.
and you're just there. You're present right now,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where we need to go. Because that's the only place you can live. You can't live in the past. You can't live in the future.
You
You
certainly
only
can.
live in the present, this very second. And
Hmm. Wow. Well, there's a moment of silence because we're right here in this present. And it feels good in the present.
it does. It does. You don't have all that crap going around in your head. You don't worry about this. They're going to take this bill. The Russians are going to attack
Right here and right now.
right now.
And be in the present. Beautiful. Wow, Jerry.
And
Well,
you just kind of make a chink in that thought process, and you watch as if you watch your thoughts, I've been doing that for a while,
mm-hmm.
and I was thinking, okay, let me sit back and see where they come from. And I'm thinking like, okay, they're going to come in this side or that side, or they're going to come down, and I'm going to see them enter. It doesn't work that way. They just kind of go boom, and you're there. They just explode in your head, and you are in that situation right there, and they just carry you off. And then you think, boom, 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 and then you come back down, and you're done that thought. And then there's this second of silence, is to grab that and expand it, and make it last as long as you possibly can. And then you're going to be grabbed by another thought. But it's like getting a chisel and knocking a hole in that thought stream and just sitting there in silence in the present for just those few seconds. You start out with that, and then you start expanding it until you make it into minutes, and then a half hour or whatever. And music does that. Good music does that. It shuts down that crap.
One thing that I invite everybody to do, something I've tried, I've set a timer on my phone. It's a little reminder on my calendar, to just stop and focus on right now.
Yeah.
Breathe.
Right.
Settle into the moment of how all my needs are met right now, how wonderful it feels right now.
Now there's nothing to worry about right now.
Just hang on to that right now. Everything is fine.
Yeah, everything's fine. They don't want you to think everything's fine.
No. And, excellent thing to gradually, like in exposure therapy, to gradually build and add increments of time to that. So that you can hang out there longer and longer periods of time.
Longer, and just expand it. The other thing that they don't like is for you to feel good. So if something good happens, expand on that also.
That's right.
Dwell on that for a while instead of the negative stuff.
That's right.
Expand on the good feelings.
And the reason it feels good is because it's our natural state. That's how we're supposed to be feeling.
That's how you're supposed to feel. So if you could get rid of all that crap running through your head all the time that isn't you, but the majority of people think that their thoughts are who they are.
That's right. Right. And it becomes habitual.
It becomes habitual.
And then back to the physiology, then, the brain starts pumping those chemicals, and then we become addicted to those chemicals, that were a result of those thoughts and those feelings, whatever they are.
Well, that's the way I am, that's the way things are.
Right.
And they don't realize that, they make that way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Beautiful, Jerry. Anything else? I think this is the perfect, way to round this out, on a positive note and with a solution, as I say, a solution, for what's ailing you. It's like a healing salve. It's like, okay, we do have this problem that's part of the human condition, as it is right now. We want to turn that around, but we do have a solution, something to work with, and just to kind of go back over them now, to counter them like you did during your scuba diving, experience.
Yeah.
You counter that with what the truth about things.
And one of the things Sherry found was she came up with kind of basically the same thing I was doing with countering, but she kind of made it more concise, and she called it "That's a Lie" program.
Yes.
Every negative thought that comes in your mind, she would say, "That's a lie.
That's a lie.
That's a lie."
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that person's thinking bad about me. That's a lie. And that doesn't allow them to get a grip, because you have to believe what they're saying in order for them to get their hook into you.
Right. You have to resonate with it in order for them to vibrate with it.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then if you buy it, then
they can leave you alone, right?
Well, they'll keep badgering you, but after a while they'll get tired of it because they're not being fed.
Right. They're hungry, so they're going to go elsewhere.
And Sherry says every once in a while, even still, they come back and visit just to see if they can get some feeding. And she just like, get out of my face, man.
I'm in control here.
Yeah.
You better go over there.
Yeah, you need to talk to her. You really need to get her on there.
That'd be so awesome. I will reach out to her. Well, Jerry, this has been amazing, and maybe you can go get some rest. I know you just got back from your trip. How did you enjoy Egypt?
Oh, it was the antiquities were amazing.
Mm-hmm.
The pyramid was, that may have been built by the Egyptians, but it certainly wasn't designed by them.
Mm-hmm.
They were only 100 years out of the Neolithic age when that thing was built. I mean, they were just barely out of the Stone Age. They didn't have the mathematics. They didn't have the tools. They didn't have the precision to build something like that. Mm-hmm. And I saw on TV just the other night that they found a huge electromagnetic field that thing is generating.
Okay.
And I talked to one of the guys who went in it, and he said it was like 90 degrees in there, and it was hot, and it was cramped. Mm-hmm. And there was nothing in there, no drawings, it wasn't like a tomb. I mean, we went in many tombs, and there were these beautiful drawings all over those tombs. There were no drawings.
Are you talking about the king or queen's chamber?
Yeah, there's nothing in there. There was only one sarcophagus, and the only thing they actually found in there was a little figurine of Akhenaten. It was not this big. That's it. That's all they found in there.
Interesting.
And they've done what do you call it? That radar stuff under the Sphinx, and there's 2 big rooms under the Sphinx. Mm-hmm. But the Egyptians won't let anybody even drill down there to put a camera in there to see. They won't let anybody see what's in there.
Interesting. Well, my theory is that we have slowly dumbed down. I think that mankind was way more advanced, probably several eons ago, and cataclysm takes hold, we fall back down,
Well, the Sphinx, you could look at the Sphinx and you could see the water erosion on it. Now, Egypt didn't have that much water for, like 11,000 years.
Yeah, like shocks work. Yeah.
So those were water erosion marks there. So the Sphinx was there thousands of years before the pyramids were built.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So, there's a lot of things that the Egyptians won't let us see. Mm-hmm. There's rooms in that pyramid they won't let them explore. Mm-hmm. There's things that they've taken out of the museums that they won't let people see. Mm-hmm. So it looks like the deep state doesn't really want us to know where these things originated.
They can't hold it forever. It's going to come out.
They might.
Yeah, it will. Well, Jerry, thank you so much, and go get some rest.
Thank you for having me.
And I thank you for joining us here on the Illuminations Media Network. Stay centered in the moment as often as you can, and raise your vibration with appreciation and gratitude and
right.
love.
Gratitude is a big one.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things to be grateful for.
Oh, and every moment.
Especially you go to Cairo. I mean, the place is filthy. It's smoggy. The streets are crowded. The traffic is insane. There's garbage laying all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
It's awful. I'm just grateful to be back here.
I know you are. Well, I thank you. Peace and blessings. And remember the great metaphysical saying of my grandma: get your head together first, and your ass will follow. Until next time, here on the Illuminations Media Network.